Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all in the masterclass of sale and leaseback transaction. We are here to discuss about transaction structure, legal documentation for strata sale and leaseback model for hotel developer, brand operators, and individual investor to make this model successful. Today, I have a very dear friend, Ashish Pyasi, as a speaker. Ashish is an associate partner with Dhir and Dhir Company, which is one of the top leading law firms in the country. And our second speaker is Mr. Nandivardhan Jain, co-founder and CEO of Noesis Capital. So we'll start with our session. Strata sale and leaseback model, a glimpse. How the strata sale model works. So here we are showing you a presentation or a model where real estate developer is developing either a service apartment, a service villa, or condo hotel and having a tie-up with the hotel brand to manage it. Then what real estate developer do like, he goes to the individual investor, sell those individual apartments or a villas or a hotel room to the investor and take it back on a leaseback model and put it those inventory in a rental pool, which will be operated by hotel brand and sell on a nightly, weekly, or fortnightly basis. Here we are showing you a slide where we have put a global scenario, how the global market look like. So there are total 400 schemes worldwide on a strata sale and leaseback model. And there are total 55,000 residential units, out of which 85% of these units are a branded units, which is tied up with a brand like Accor, Marriott, Hyatt, and 15% of them is a non-branded. Here we are giving you a complete share of sale and leaseback across all the brands. So we have studied a couple of sale and leaseback model and how they are tied up with the brands, out of which Marriott is having a lion's share in this. Almost out of the 400 units, 31% units were tied up with the Marriott brands. 10% of the units were tied up with Four Seasons, 7% was with the Hyatt, 5% with the Accor, 5% with the Kempinski, 4% with the Shangri-La, 3% with the Intercon IHG Group, 3% with the Banyan Tree, 3% with the Trump Group, and 2% with the Manhattan Oriental, and the 25% is with the other brands. So the potential location in India for Sslb model, we have identified around 50 to 60 locations in India which are good for strata sale and leaseback model, where we have a location in the leisure destination, urban tourism, and pilgrim destination. Nandi, you would like to highlight on this?
Sure. Thanks, Vijay. Thanks for your setting the tone for this particular leg of the workshop. So as we discussed in the previous session also, currently the financial institution have a very conservative view when it comes to the financing of the hospitality project or the real estate development project. So keeping all that circumstances, when at the same time, if we go to pre-COVID level, the banking norms when it comes to the hospitality, they keep hospitality asset also in mind while financing a real estate project. Okay, they treat it as any other real estate asset class, and the long battle is going on at different platforms that this need to be classified as an infrastructure. Infrastructure status should be given to this so that a long-term tenure can be debt tenure can be provided for this asset class as well. But considering all that, the ground realities in the market right now, this is one business model on which, if you come with the right credibility, if you come with the right intent, and especially with the right commercial, legal, and transaction structure, this is gonna be one of the boon in the current circumstances. Okay, now the key areas or locations which we have identified where this will work, or already in some of these micro markets, this particular project is already doing pretty well, are firstly the established leisure destinations, which are starting from Himachal Pradesh or the Uttaranchal or Rajasthan, the Gujarat, the port part, particularly the Saurashtra side, or the coming to the Goa, or the down south in the Kerala market, where you have established those particular destinations have a good brand recall value among the travelers, among the investor community. So those are the established leisure destinations. On the periphery of that, these projects can absolutely do well, because a lot of investors have liking for hospitality sector, and then it is about touch and feel. It's about the experience. It's about the celebrations in these facilities. Okay, and the current circumstances, probably work from home gonna sustain for long. Okay, but I really can't think of there is any substitute for vacation from home. Okay, or the having a good time from home. Whereas when you are in the facility, like on the beaches or in the hills, the experience is altogether different. You want to be close to the nature. You want to rewind yourself. So that's the reason the leisure, for that you have to move out, and that's the reason staycation and weekend getaways business is picking up in last 45 to 60 years. That's what the statistics is showing. So leisure locations definitely is going to be on the top chart. Okay, this is one of the most safest bet if someone is planning to do Strata sale and leaseback module business development, real estate development on the hospitality side. One of the most, I will say, the safest and established tourist circuits is going to be the most prevalent one. And apart from the urban tourism is very much picking up. What do we mean by urban tourism? Urban tourism is something when you can travel to a destination within 60 to 19 minutes drive. For example, for someone who's living in Navi Mumbai, Lonavala or Karjat is an urban tourism for him because he can drive down from there within 45 minutes to 1 hour at max. And you are in the middle of nature, close to the hills or the forest or the waterfalls. So that's something like this. Similarly, from Mumbai, someone living in Thana, Igatpuri or Kasara belt is urban tourism for him. Or for the people living in Delhi NCR, going to the Neemrana or Manesar, some of the widespread resorts, that's the urban tourism for them, which is largely dependent upon the weekend getaways or staycation business or the social events, how these particular resorts or the business units do the economics well. Now, the third is the pilgrim destination. As a country, there's a lot of following for every caste, religion, set. So pilgrim destination works on the devotion part, and certain established pilgrim destinations like Katra, Tirupati, and Dwarka, and Varanasi, these and Ayodhya, these have a huge potential for product like this. Okay, so these are the three sectors, and out of which we have identified 60 markets. Okay, which we have well covered in our report as well. We have prepared a report on this entire business model. So these you can go through these locations, and even offline if you want to have any discussion on this particular subject, our team will be more than happy to engage on a call with you to explain further in case you have any queries, why specific markets have better opportunities rather than the entire country. So India has the potential to cater to almost 50% shares of world branded strata hotel market in the next 5 to 7 years. Now, that statistic we are putting up considering our population, our base, and the emerging middle income group. Okay, and at the same time, the financial institutions' view on the entire, the industry at this point of time. So there's a high probability if we execute. Execution is the key over here. If we execute this project effectively in a planned and in a structured manner, this particular business model have a huge and humongous opportunity. This just need to be structured correctly from the land acquisition stage till operation. Okay, which we're going to discuss step by step in the next slide, and we will explain you how the process needs to be followed further. Vijay, next slide, please. Now, so the key elements of this. Sure. Go ahead, Vijay. You want to answer?
Okay. So the key elements of the business model. The first key element is a feasibility study. Whenever you are taking a sale and leaseback project, the more important aspect of this the project is a feasibility study, where you have to do a proper demand and supply analysis. You have to study who are your competitor, what are the future competitions coming up, and how the 10-year financial statements look like. Second is a brand operator search and a contract negotiation. You need to tie up with a good brand, which can manage those which can manage this upcoming development. Then we have to do a proper study of a middle income group owning those second home. We have to appoint a good hospitality consultant, starting from the kitchen, the architect, interior designer, back of the house consultant. A proper rigorous cost assessment and contract awarding need to be done. RERA registration. Need to have a proper sales team which can explain this to the investor. And then once the units are sold, we need to have a proper investor relationship and asset management company, which is handling all the investor queries. And then once the property is operational, a regular audit has to be done by the big five audit firms.
Thanks, Vijay. I would like to substantiate what you just mentioned. Thanks for highlighting all these points. Okay. So when, as a developer, you are acquire a land or you're planning to acquire the land, okay, to develop something like this, or you already own a land. Before drawing to the conclusion that I'm gonna do a hotel or resort or a residential, okay, get a detailed professional third-party feasibility study, or best use feasibility study for that particular project. Okay, you may have certain guts, you may have your own experiences, but at some time as a developer, you may get biased with your own thought processes, with your own experiences. So it's very important to get an independent feasibility study. So on a project, let's say if you're building a 100-room resort, that project easily is gonna be anything from 60 to 100 crores. Project of that size and magnitude, few lakhs is just a pennies in this entire project scale. Get a feasibility study report. In that feasibility study, what is gonna the consulting company is gonna do? The first thing they're gonna check whether a hospitality project is viable also here or not. What are the demand drivers? Who are the people who are gonna come and stay here? Okay, what segment of the what is your target audience for that? What type of ARRs we can achieve from this project? What type of occupancy we can do? What type of MICE business or the social events businesses we can drive here in terms of the revenues? Because if the revenues are there, only then the balanced financial aspect of the entire project will fall in place. Okay, now this happens only if you get deep into this at micro and macro level, where you see historical numbers of the existing content available in that market. Okay, when you analyze it properly and you prepare a strong spreadsheet of the base of 10 years, that this is the returns which this project is going to get at a project level. Forget who is developing, who is the retail investor, from where the finances are coming. This is all a secondary. Right now, just the point is to first step is to check the project viability. If I have the turnover projections is, let's say, $100, are we going to earn $40, $30, $35? What are we going to earn at the enterprise level? That's a crucial question. Now, once we know that this is the market for the product like this is what will suit at this particular micro market, whether it's a mid-segment product, or it's going to be a 4-star or upscale or 5-star or luxury, or maybe a budget. Okay, let that happen. Let the multiple scenario to be presented to you by a third party. After that, form yourself that this is the segment you're going to target. Let's say, for example, the feasibility study say at this location you should build 150 or 200 rooms.
Sorry for the technical glitch. I think my colleague will join back soon.
Vijay, just to add to what Nandi was saying, I could sense that since there is we are talking about the feasibility study, and first and foremost, before I get into that, thank you for such a nice introduction and for welcoming me to another session of Ngage and Noesis hospitality, wherein I am getting a chance to touch upon key aspects on these contracts. Now, when we talk about feasibility study, of course, it is important that you do a feasibility study, but at the same time, there is one element which you should also include, that is the legal aspect related to the feasibility. That is, when you are entering into, say, suppose you are identifying a area where you want to build a project. Now you have to also see whether you can build such a project in that location or not, whether legally it is possible or not. So suppose if the land belongs to you, well and good, then there is no difficulty. But whether the law permits you to do that, whether the local regulations and the town planning, whether permits you to do that, that has to be checked. So this again becomes a part of the feasibility study. Also, say suppose your land is, if it's a beach side property, and you may also have to see whether the you're not infringing any coastal norms, the CRZ norms which are there. You are not infringing any of them, and the project which you are planning to come up with is in sync with those regulations, because it is very important. Otherwise, tomorrow you will be facing some trouble from either of the angle, either from the regulator side, the local authorities will trouble you, or the in fact in some of the locations, say forest areas, if you have a good land, or if you have identified that you can come up with a different project, it shouldn't happen that the forest authorities refuse you to come up with such kind of project. So this is also equally important, that while you are doing this feasibility study, these angles are also checked.
Okay. Thank you, Ashish. So, what are the points should be as a hotel developer, I should consider when I'm tying up with the operator for regular management contract and the operation of the hotel?
So see, first and foremost thing, it's a mix of both, I would say, because commercially also you have to see,
Yeah.
have to see the brand value, with whom you are associating with,
Sure.
and since it's a as it's a ultimately there are two people who are going to come together and are going to perform. But
Yeah.
the most important thing, that the mentality, the thought process should be identical, because if there is a difference in the beginning itself, the contract negotiation comes later. But first thing, that the thinking should be alike, and then we will be touching upon the contract negotiation. The key terms would be, of course, when you are talking about the hotel management company, in this kind of business model, there is a possibility for promoter to have his own company also. So
Sure.
there the scope reduces. Whereas in other models, we have seen that the brand operator may be separate, or people may look at having a separate set of system, or I would say where the contribution is from both the sides. Say for example, the person who is building the property may also would like to run the show, and he may
Okay.
also like to operate the hotel. So there is a
Sure.
scope for that also. There the negotiation would be slightly easier. The terms would be much easier, and probably it will be in sync with the other documentation which has been done for the formation or the building of that project. Now, in this kind of model, what happens is you also need to be careful that when on one hand, so I'll just explain this model a bit from legal perspective. It's a combination of a sale and a lease.
Yeah.
Now, when we are talking about the sale, so the sale is complete sale. You are giving a sale, but at the same time, it is linked with lease. Why it is linked with lease? So that there is a model which will help you, both the person who is selling it, the promoter, the developer, and also the people who are investing, to get some benefits out of it. Now, the sale would be designed in a way that what all area is getting sold out to a investor. Now the
Sure.
investor, for him to look at the revenue model. Now before he looks at these revenue models, what are the components on which he is going to drive these revenues? That would be the probably some common area may also be included in addition to what he has already purchased, because if it's a sale, he may also be getting some common areas with it, because we are talking about individual units being sold in the model. There are investors, maybe individual investors also, HNIs also, or maybe there is a group of investors who would like to come forward and invest. And then, so they always get some additional common pool. So, for example, now you would see in malls, there is a common area which is available to everyone. I'm just giving
Yeah.
this example. Same can be used in this model also.
Sure.
There is a common area. I may be having one, showroom. Other person may have the second showroom. But at the same time, when I am purchasing it, I am also getting a common area. Now, in this
Sure.
model, what happens is when the investor, he is leasing it to the promoter or a third party, which is again either formed by the promoter only, so that a brand, generally, because a brand driven model will generate more revenue, it becomes easier for anyone to sell the inventory also. So what happens is the brand will be in touch with the this third special purpose vehicle which is formed, will be looking after that entire lease model. The lease will be entered into between the property owners, the buyers who have bought the property, because some part the promoter will retain with himself, and some part will go to the investors who are investing. Because if investor sells out the entire inventory or the units which he has, then there will be a problem also, because in future if there are 100 investors and there's no promoter, and there's the builder or the developer who has built this property or project, if he goes out of the property, then I'm sure it will lead to little bit of friction as well. So what happens is the minute there is a sale, then a back-to-back lease happens. Now this lease is again, as I said, there will be some common area also which will be given to the property owners with the undivided share. Generally, it is used as undivided share, The reason is because you are also going to drive some benefits out of it. Now, those are the some of the points which needs to be negotiated. When it is sale, at the time of sale, you will also have to see what all common areas you are going to get. What is going to be the sale consideration, how it is to be paid, what are the timelines, because now RERA is also there, so you have to be a bit careful for the promoter also, that what you are committing, you should be able to fulfill that. When it comes to a buyer, he will also be looking at from that perspective, that when he is going to get the property and when his revenues will start, because everyone whosoever is going to come forward to invest in this, his idea is to generate some revenue. So this becomes very important. Now, on the other hand, once the SPV is formed, who will be entering into lease. So first is sale, the second leg is lease. When the SPV comes forward, SPV will have to, on one hand, deal with the these investors, the promoter, because promoter is having one part of the property, one part of the property is with the investors. The SPV will enter into arrangement with this brand, because if all the investors, for example, if they have to go, so the agreement will also be covering these aspects. There will be a mechanism which will be provided in the agreement itself, how this entire thing will work out. Who will be, so generally the key people are, there is one person called investor officer or relationship manager, relationship officer, so this becomes very important, and they play a very important role. So there will be, for a brand also, it can't be that the brand goes and starts negotiating with individual investors. That will not work out in the long term or in any manner, because if there are too many people, then brand will not be able to run and operate. Now, in terms of day-to-day operations, of course, when you are entering into a lease, your involvement, though you are the owner of the property, but at the same time, you can't have interference in day-to-day operations. So there is some line has to be drawn there also. So these are the key aspects which are generally discussed and negotiated, and the roles and responsibilities again becomes a very important aspect when it comes to lease. In sale, since it's a sale, the minute sale is concluded, that aspect is covered, and it comes to an end. The next is lease. In the lease, you have to see what are the roles and responsibilities of both the sides, how it is going to work it out. Because if there is any breach, you may also call it as a material breach. But generally, in these kind of model, what happens is the termination for lessor is only when there is no payment of lease rent. Otherwise, he cannot terminate. Otherwise, if such a broad liberty is given to the investors to terminate the lease for small breaches also, or for that matter, if there is a easy exit available to them, then the model may not work out, because then for small incentives or returns, there may be a chaos also, because say suppose if 10% of the investors, or say suppose 10% of the people are not very comfortable, then it will affect the entire project. So it is very important, as I said in the beginning also, that it is very important the people who are coming forward, they should have a they should have a common thinking, and the motto should be same, and then the idea that they should be thinking alike when they are entering this transaction in the space. So that is very important, and that can be considered. Sorry, I have taken too much time on this.
That's fine. Ashish, can you throw some light on the RERA registration, like how the RERA will help to safeguard the interest of investors?
Now with the registration, now it's one of the requirement, and for the investors it becomes very important. Today, till few years back, when RERA was not there, it was very difficult for anyone who is investing in the property to enforce some of the rights and the obligations which promoters are promising. Because say suppose if they say that they have to they will be completing the project in say 5 years time. Now 10 years are over, you are still running after the promoter to get the possession of your property. When it comes to RERA, there are certain repercussions, and those repercussions are very serious also. Those are not and also what used to happen, there was one of the concern which investor, as an investor, even I would prefer that my money what I am investing in a project is secure. Now in RERA, the formalities are formalities are there are quite a number of formalities you have to the procedure aspect. I am not going to touch upon that. I'll just give you the overview. in terms of registration, once the project, so you have to disclose all the information which is there in the provisions also. Once that disclosure is being done, the registration is allowed, then your project is registered. There are, as I said, protecting the investment which I am making. Now, if I am a promoter, I am having, or I am a builder, I am having 3 projects. I can't use money which is belonging to one project in the other. So that way, that kind of protection comes to the investors also, which is very important, because it shouldn't happen that the money which is lying in one project is being used for other project. So that protects, because the project will get completed soon, because most of the time in these difficult times, most of the promoters are having some financial distress or the other. So this RERA provision helps them to that extent. Then the, as I said, the obligation of giving possession on time. If there is any delay, you are bound to pay an interest also. That if the RERA, people can also raise a complaint before the RERA also. There is an authority, you can raise a complaint, and RERA can impose penalty interest on the delay. Promoter will be liable with, and if there is a breach, or if the orders are not obeyed, then it may lead to further prosecution also. So there is a mechanism being provided. Of course, there are various aspects depending on the nature of the complaint which a investor may have. But broadly speaking, now the transparency has come, because you have to disclose each and everything, right from the title, the licenses on your info on the website itself, because most of the things are covered. Uh, on your website, you have to disclose these things, and these are the specific provisions which are mentioned in the act itself. So right from disclosure till the time you give the possession, if there is any discrepancy, if you are not following the provisions diligently, the investor can come after you if you are a promoter. So for investors also it becomes easier, and for promoter also, that these are the minimum standard which he'll have to make.
So moving forward,
yeah,
why strata sale and leaseback model is required in hotel industry in India? So we have analyzed that totally there is around 46,235 crore debt in the hotel industry right now, out of which has grown 53% between November 11 till June 20. Generally, a hotel project take almost 8 to 10 years of a gestation period. Okay, and recently we have seen a lot of hotel projects are going into NCLT and DRT, and till now there are around 88 cases has already filed with the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India, and out of which 46 cases have seen the resolution, and 42 two cases are still going till March 2020. So what are the benefit of strata sale and leaseback model? So the benefits we have divided into 2 parts, the benefit to the developer and the benefit to the unit owners. So when a developer is developing a strata sale leaseback model kind of a development, it's create a self-sustaining property as a partly sale model, which help the developer to raise the fund from the project itself. Earlier what happened, like builders, he developed the hotel project, he apply for a bank loan and goes to the bank, and then bank will fund him the project, and it will take almost a long time to pay the EMIs and get the project free from the loan. But here what the developer is doing, he is self-sustaining the property, he's selling those units and recovering the development cost. For the unit owner, the benefit is that he can own the second home, which become very realistic for him. The second benefit to the developer is it's allowed developer to associate with the branded chain to provide quality service to its customer and the guest. So what happened, like when you are planning to develop, or a developer planning to develop, he tied up with a good hotel and reputed hotel chain for day-to-day operations to manage the property on a day-to-day basis. And the advantage to the owner or an investor is that the property is revenue generating asset and is leased back to the developer to ensure that it generates the revenue on a monthly basis. The third advantage to the developer, it reduces the break-even time of the project. Normally, we have seen in the past that the hotel project break even between 7 to 9 years, but with the help of sale and leaseback model, it can break even within the 2 to 3 years. The advantage to the investor is that the owner get the use of the property for the holiday, weekend getaways, for the terms and condition which is specific in the lease agreement. benefit to the developer is the developer without any experience in the hotel industry can enter into this kind of asset class because he can tie up with the branded hotel chain, which ensure and provide a good quality experience and can run the property to its full scale. For the investor, in the unusual circumstances like COVID scenario, the owner can use this property for a long stay purpose. For a developer, tie up with the brand chain will increase the viability of the property, and brand chain usually have a central reservation system and a proper marketing and distribution channel which allow them to increase the reach. The advantage to the investor is the project is loaded with the amenities and minimal maintenance and supervision is required because currently the property will be managed by a good quality operator which take care of the brand standard, hygiene, safety, and upkeep of the properties. Here, what we have done, like we have prepared a financial model, how the sale and leaseback model work and what kind of returns can be generated by the investment. So this is basically a more of a guesstimates which we have done. So we have projected 10 years projections for here. So what we have done, like we have taken the room, we have assumed there is a 100-room property, which is doing an occupancy of say 53%. The occupancy is increasing by 5% every year. And the same time, the ARR is also increasing by 5% every year. So we have taken a total revenue here and we have divided the revenue between three parts: the room revenue, F&B revenue, and the revenue coming from the other MOD departments. Here we highlighted what will be the total expenses in the hotel, undistributed expenses, and then what will be the gross operating profit. After the gross operating profit, we have deducted the expenses like insurance, management fee, and then we arrive at the gross operating profit, net gross operating profit of the property. We assume that the unit which an investor is going to buy will be a cost him around say 1 crore of rupees. On that basis of 1 crore of rupees, what kind of return he going to generate over a period of 10 years. So we have done the profit sharing on a per room basis, and then return, which is you can see the 7%, 7.69, 8.4 is the return which investor is making over a 10 years time. In a 10 years, the average rate of return will be 11.09%. These are the assumption which we have taken. We have taken the first full year occupancy is around 50%, and it's growing by 5% every year. And the room revenues are also assumed and growing at 5% every year. So this statement shows that an individual or investor who's investing around 1 crore rupees in this kind of a model is earning within 10 years time, and at the same time he has a opportunity to encash on the capital appreciation as well. So what are the key legal points to consider when we are doing a strata sale and leaseback and the sales agreement? The first thing is ownership and usership, lease agreement, amenities revenue, minority stake ownership, operator, asset management, and investor relationship. Ashish, I would request you if you can highlight on those points, please.
Yeah. Sure. Before as I was explaining earlier, before we get into these specifics, I want to, explain as, earlier I have just said that, when we are entering into a sale is a simple transaction. Sale gets concluded, but the idea here is that there will be a lease back. And because that's how this model works. If there's no lease back done immediately, then there's no control, and then the project will not see the light of the day. So it is very important that the lease is also done in the very first instance. And in some of the models which are evolving, since this is also a new concept, of course, in India, I would say it's evolving. The documentation is also not much. What is happening is people enter into a very simple arrangement, or probably for the sale purpose. But when it comes to lease, so the idea should be that both should be linked together. When a person is coming to you, so if you look at it from the promoter perspective, it should be worded, or it should be designed in such a way that when you are looking at the sale document, you are also looking at the lease simultaneously. Because the lease, so the pre-specified agreement should be given to them in hand in advance, so that they know what they are entering into. They have a better clarity in terms of and it becomes easier for the promoter also to sell the project easily, because then he would be able to tell them that, okay, you are coming for this particular purpose, you are coming forward to invest in this property in this unit, and these are the returns you are going to get on this lease model and the details will be covered in that pre-specified agreement which you enter into. So this is how ideally people should be approaching towards this. When you are as an investor, you should also ask for the lease document immediately when you're looking at the draft sale agreement, so that you have a better clarity in terms of. So this is broad perspective as to when you are approaching towards this transaction. Now getting into the specific, since it's a sales agreement, the ownership and the usership. Now ownership, what happens is the ownership gets transferred. So suppose I am the promoter, I am building this building. Uh, Out of this building, some units, some apartments may be sold. Those apartments will be purchased by the the buyer or the investor. Now the ownership gets transferred to the buyer or the owner. The ownership will be in respect of the the unit. And as I said earlier, also I have referred that there will be some common spaces also which are there. So you will get an undivided share, because that's how this model works. You will not get a specific area. So suppose if I am purchasing an apartment, I can't say that the entire lobby will belong to me. You can't have such privilege also. What you will have in the place is that you are going to get an undivided share, because everyone is going to use that. Because if there are 4 apartments on the same floor, then those apartments will be used by all the floor people accordingly. It can't be that you have a privilege to yourself. So in terms of ownership, of course, you are going to get the ownership with you, but the usership will be restricted. Now, your usership will also be linked to the lease. Now, when you are entering into the lease, you will also have you will are giving those rights, the rights of users, the access to the SPV. That SPV will look after everything. The usership from investor perspective, that as in the beginning of the presentation, also in a couple of slides, we have seen that for your leisure purpose or for your own use, you can also use that property for some time. It can be a second home also. But at the same time, if you are entering into such suggestion, or if you are looking at such structure in place, you also have to be conscious that probably the agreement may say that, see, you may not be able to draw any revenue for that period when you are going to utilize it, because ultimately it may be a loss for the SPV, which
Other
is
unit holders.
show for you. Yeah, so the revenue loss should not happen, though you are using, and at the same time, you should not be unjustly benefited out of it by saying that I am using the property, but at the same time I need revenue also for that period. So that is something. So usership also will be there, but at the same time it will be restricted. So that is something which should be made very clear to. Now, moving on to the next point, lease agreement. As I said, lease agreement is very important because it will be defining the way the property will be used, how the revenue will be shared, the mechanism, the roles and responsibilities. Now, roles and responsibilities are very important key aspect, and lease rent, of course, because that's the revenue which everyone is looking forward. The entire effort is being put so that they get a revenue. Now, how this revenue will be paid is something which we'll touch upon in the later part. But lease agreement should be watertight, because it should not happen that today, because of certain reasons or because of your lease agreement not being worded properly, you are having the clauses are ambiguous. It may lead to certain dispute. And as I said, the roles and responsibilities should be defined very clearly for both the parties. The investor, who is now who has become the owner of the property, and the SPV, who is taking the property on the lease. Because in terms of using, as I said, say suppose someone wants to use the property for a few days, the person who has purchased this property, investor, that should also be covered in the agreement. If that is not covered in the agreement, then how parties will otherwise it may lead to friction also between them. So it is very important that these aspects also gets covered in the agreement. The reps and warranties are very important. Now these reps and warranties, as I said, it may also lead to a material breach if there is a misrepresentation in respect of anything. Then it may lead to a breach, and that breach will be treated as a material breach. There are a couple of judgments also to that effect, which says that these reps becomes a material breach. Though your agreement may say that a lessor will be able to terminate the lease agreement only when there is a non-payment of rental, because for success of this model, it is very important that as long as you are getting the revenue and all other checks and balances are in place, you are getting your revenue, there shouldn't be any interference. At the same time, these representations which you are making, if those representations are false, then it may lead to a material breach also. It may amount to a fraud in case if I'll just give you an example. So suppose you are representing that you are having a certain class of or say suppose you have represented that you will be giving as a SPV will be giving say MIS within a fortnight, or if your accounts are not matching. Being an investor, I need some protection from that perspective as well, because I need to see what how much revenue is being generated, what check and balance I can have in place. So if that is not there, the if this is extended further, if say suppose some fraud is being determined in this, then what? So the courts have taken a view also that these representation and warranties forms may lead to a material breach also if there is any misrepresentation. So it is very important. Now amenities revenue. So there is a revenue being generated in terms of these amenities which are there, because as I said, there will be a common say suppose within a property you may have a banquet hall also. You may not have a direct ownership of that, but as I said, there will be some revenue. So you can put in the sale agreement itself that see this part will not be covered, or this may be covered, or this revenue will be entitled to you. This is again a commercial call, but then it has to be recorded in the sale and the lease agreement both. Now minority stake ownership. Now the idea is that today instead of raising an equity, what I am doing is I am giving the units. People are coming and investing in those units, and at the same time I'm getting equity for myself. I'm getting funds for my project, so that I can develop my project and can take it to the next level, which is operating, making it operational project. For this purpose, minority stake, the interest needs to be protected. Now there are enough checks and balances, as we discussed about RERA also. RERA is there for their protection, because you get the unit in place. You may not be able to voice it, but then your officer, as I said in the couple of minutes back, that the officer, the owner representative, he'll be a representative of the owners. He will be negotiating on your behalf. It's not like you can go and discuss it. So these are the other key aspects which will be covered in your agreements. Now asset management and investor relations. Now the next operator also. When you are identifying the operator, uh, of course, the identification will be done by the promoter only, because there is a SPV in place, so he will be entering into.
Yeah.
But that is something which you also have to see when you are investing. As an investor, I am suggesting that this is something more of a identification, whether you are comfortable in such brand or not. So that you have to see. But when you enter into, you have to have a uh, arrangement in place that if there is a change in brand also, how that will be regulated, whether some protection will be there for that also or not. So these are other terms which can be covered in your agreement from investor perspective. Similarly, when it comes to the promoter or the SPV, they should have a full control. Otherwise, what will happen if these day-to-day operations or change in say common spaces, say suppose some thing needs to be repaired or some common areas are there for which some expenses are required. Now if I don't have the full control over those expenses or other things, then it becomes very difficult for me to operate. And if the investors keep troubling me, interfering with me, then obviously I will not be able to run the show. So these are the key terms which also should be covered, and then you will have specific terms to this effect also, that you will not be interfering with the day-to-day operations. You'll have a full control over the management of the operations, basically, of the property. That will be given to the SP. Now moving on to the next one, Vijay.
Yeah. Key legal points to consider in a sale agreement: maintenance and contingency fees, sale area, failure to pay the lease rental, payment of lease rental monthly, quarterly, half yearly, or yearly, or a lease rental scenario in a COVID-19 like situations.
So most of the points I have already covered. Say failure to lease rentals, it may lead to termination of the lease also. Because for me, if I am an investor, for me most important aspect is that I should get a revenue in form of lease rental, uh, and it will lead to termination. Now in the contract, you can also provide that whether the lease rental may not be paid. Say suppose if it is not paid on first, can you terminate the agreement? The question will arise: can you terminate it on the very next day? No. Ideally, you should have a period also, some grace period also be provided. This is something more of a negotiation, and then it will be covered in the agreement, so that The agreement is watertight. There's no scope for any manipulation also from either side, and the lease rentals should be paid, in a manner which has been already agreed upon in the agreement. It can be monthly, quarterly, or half yearly also, or maybe yearly also. But when you are agreeing upon, if say suppose there is a delay, whether that delay is curable or not, whether you can enter into whether you can terminate that contract or not. So these are term and termination. Now, one of the key aspects of this, the term will be a long-term lease. It is not going to be just 5-7 years, because as we have seen, the gestation period itself is running into 7 to 8 years. So that lease would be a very long lease, say 20 years, 30 years also. So that is the another aspect which is very important. The termination, because if I am not getting the rental, then I should be allowed to terminate. This is the most important aspect from the investor perspective. From operator perspective, from the promoter's perspective, it is very important that the day-to-day interference should not happen. So for that purpose, generally, the right to terminate is not given to the investor to that extent in terms of the operation. It is merely restricted only to the rental part. If there is no rental, so it is very important that these aspects are specifically worded, clearly worded in the agreement. Now, sale area, because this I have already explained. I'm probably moving from one to the other, but sale area is equally important. What we are actually selling, whether the common area will also be sold, whether you are having a fixed ownership on that, so suppose. But the idea is you will get the fixed unit, and you will also get some undivided interest in a common pool. That's how generally this model is working. But again, it depends whether in that common area what all things can be covered, and what will be the revenue which can be generated out of it, and how this revenue will be distributed. That is something which will be covered in the lease end. And this is more of a negotiation, but for investors and for the promoters, promoter may not be able to, if he starts, giving revenue for each and everything, then what benefit will be there for him? That's how the promoter will look at it. Similarly, investor will look at it that if I am entitled for some undivided, share in the property, common spaces, then I should also get some rental for that. So that is something commercial, but at the same time, a couple of checks and balances can be put in the place that okay, this much revenue is there, then if this revenue is generated from this common area, as I said, banquet hall or some other facility which is there, then accordingly revenue can be designed for that. Now, lease rentals in scenario like COVID-19. Now, this is something which is not many people have anticipated that something of this sort will happen. But this is again an event which is beyond anyone's control. In legal parlance, we generally say that it is a force majeure event. You may provide in your agreement that there is a force majeure clause which protects both the parties. In the lease rent, it will say that if some event which is beyond your control, if that event happens during that period, you will not be liable to pay any lease rental, or maybe a concessionary rental would be payable on that. So it is something which you can negotiate and can be provided in the agreement itself. But what we have seen in recent past, that for this period, because obviously if the hotels are not allowed to operate, or the property is not allowed to operate, then there will be no rental income as such. So that is something. So this will be covered in the force majeure, and it is very important that these are covered in your agreement very clearly. Force majeure clause becomes very important, especially in last 6 months. What we have seen, that most of the litigation is also happening when it comes to rentals, is because the force majeure clause is not properly worded. So it is very important that these scenarios are also covered in your agreement by way of a force majeure. And if there is any ambiguity, then it will lead to further dispute between the parties. Vijay, so
Yeah.
next.
Sure.
Okay, so the next one is something which probably you and
Yeah.
Nandi will be.
And me and Nandi will discuss. So these are the top points to be considered by an investor. First thing is the brand value of a developer, a commitment of developer to the project, clear land titles and other licenses, a repute of a hotel brand who will be operating the property, market scenario, commitment of the investor, ownership clarity, and resale rights. And Nandi, can you take up those points?
Sure. Thanks, Vijay. Thank you very much. So brand value of the developer is very critical. In our previous session also we discussed, Santosh picked up very relevantly that the trust factor is the most important thing in this particular business model, and that is what the developer need to have. So if the first league of the developers coming and doing, obviously it helps a lot in among the investor community to come and invest in project like this. So that's it. Even if you are like first time developer, it's going to be the tough one to execute the first project. But if you execute or the phase one of that project, okay, let's say you have a plan for 200 300 villa resort. So the first leg, which is the, let's for example 70 80 keys, so that's going to be the challenging part where the someone wants to see your execution. Probably the sales will be weak, till the time you don't demonstrate, if you don't have a track record on this. But if you have demonstrated the execution, the quality, and the experience what you have created, the phase two and phase three become much easier and easily doable on this particular business model. So that's very important. So either you are having already historical track record, and if you don't have, we need to make sure that these areas are well thought of and well planned on that front. Okay. Now the second point, which is in regard to the commitment of the developer of the project. So the most important thing is that the developer need to upfront and transparent. The intent while planning the project need to be upfront and transparent and crystal clear on all the aspects, which Ashish also very well pointed that if we don't have a transparency and clarity, sometimes it's not that intentionally you are not providing information, it's just the negligence where certain points have not been well covered. So if the transparency is there at the stage one, that relationship go for a long way. And one happy investor will get you 10 more investor for your project from the retail aspect. So it's very important that the entire agreement with the investor when you're selling the particular villa is very crystal clear, and stay away from giving a fixed rentals. Okay, a lot of projects in this country in this particular module went wrong because developer committed 8%, 10%, 12% return per annum on the investment what retail investor have the money what he has invested on that particular villa or a room or a key. So there it went wrong. Stay away from you because market dynamics are very different. If you ask any hospitality pundit that what's the ARR occupancy going to be after 3 years or 5 years, none of us knows. Let me be very honest and candid. If someone say he knows what's going to be ARR and occupancy for any particular market, he's lying. I can tell you on the face of this entire conversation. So no one of us know that what's going to be ARR occupancy. We can have certain forecast looking towards the current market conditions. Okay, looking towards the future supply we are aware of the macro level growth. We can have certain forecast and estimation. But if someone a lot of situation can happen. Let's say if in the 5 years the supply increases by 40%, 50% in that particular micro market. Okay, obviously there's gonna be crash in the ARR and occupancies what we would have forecasted at that time. Okay, that's gonna happen for sure. So probably at that time we didn't have that information and statistics available to that. So it's not the fault of a consulting company, but market dynamics changes very fast. So that's the reason that stay away from giving fixed rentals. Find the right retail investor for your project, someone who has the intent to invest in the hospitality asset class. Okay, there's enough emerging middle income group population in our country who are passionate for hospitality, but hospitality is a high capex business. That's the reason they stay away from investing in that. But here where you're giving them an opportunity to invest, to stay a few days, and they're getting some return out of that, which is a variable lease, which is a revenue share, okay, in our technical language. So they are getting returns against it. They don't have to invest anything in the maintenance because the hotel revenues and the profitability will take care of the maintenance. The asset will be well taken care of. So that's what it is. So it's far better than a second home, and it's a yielding asset. Okay, so that's what it is. The commitment of the developer towards the project is very important, just to make you accelerate your sales. Don't give them false assurances, or don't get into a trap of giving them a fixed rental. Now, the next point is clear land titles and other licenses. Okay, as Ashish also mentioned, then when you're acquiring the land, make sure you have done waterproof legal due diligence on the project. You have appointed the licensed consultants, which are aware about the local authorities norms, about the local regulations and all the subject. Make sure that all things are well sorted. And when you are doing a project like this, make sure that it's a commercial NA has been done and this project is approved as a commercial hotel or commercial service apartment or a commercial resort. Kindly don't do it in a residential building and then you try to sell it off, lease it back and all that. Even if you do this tomorrow to get an operator for a project which is on residential, it's gonna be very, very difficult, or actually practically none of the operator will prefer, because a lot of commercial licenses cannot be obtained on project like this. So that's the reason the clear title and the other licenses run a proper diligence report on this before acquiring the land or before commencing the project, because at the end it's a high capex projects. Now the next point is the repute of the hotel brand who will be operating the property. That's very important. Okay, now certain international or national or regional brands have their own core strength and they have their own fan following as well. Okay, now if you get that particular brand which is appropriate for that particular location. Okay, now when we decide the operator, there are 18 different parameters to choose a brand for a property. It depends on their regional expertise, their national expertise, their distribution system, how well they have performed, in leisure segment, if you are doing, or in urban tourism, or in a city hotel. Okay, what's the recruitment policies, how satisfied the guest is, their trip advisor reviews on their existing assets, and many other subjects are there. If I start putting up every single point, it's going to be a long conversation, but keeping it short. So there are 18 different parameters when we choose an operator, and probably one brand which is very strong in the northern India, he may not be that strong in the eastern India. Okay, or may not be having that strong brand recall value in the southern India, or maybe very strong in the western India. So considering your product, your location, your micro market, and the audience, what we intend to target, we need to decide the brand. Okay, so that's a very crucial aspect, because it's a marriage. When you are getting into contract with the operator to operate your asset, it's a long-term relationship, long-term association, which remains for 15 to 20 years. And it's not very preferred to change brands in between the journey. Because it has its own complications if we try to get to this. So married rightly at the level one only, because that gives a lot of confidence to your retail investor when they're buying your asset, when they're buying that villa or a room or a service apartment. So make sure that you pick up the right one which has a good brand recall value, and the other aspect of the operations, because if the brand is performing well, the asset is yielding good EBIT levels, okay, it means automatically the return of the investor is increasing. So if the return of investor is increasing, he's definitely going to invest with you in your next project also. Or he's going to tell his near dears to invest in this project because this project of credibility. Maybe you have a great intent. Maybe one wrong financial or commercial decision can spoil the entire project. So this operator appointment is that one crucial step when you decide to have on your property. Okay, the market scenario, and this is part of the feasibility study, so that check well in advance that what type of comp set you have. I briefly explained you in the previous slide also the importance of conducting a feasibility study, that what type of comp set, what type of historical numbers they are doing, okay, and look on all that and have a fair estimate that what type of performance we can make and what uniqueness we are bringing to the property. That's very critical. Don't think of building only a conventional resort that I'll make nice pool, nice jacuzzi, and good indoor games, little bit green area, and good with that. Be innovative, come up with a unique concept, make a USP of your own that people know you for those one or two or three things, your property. Okay, so that's very important. Now, once you are doing all this right, automatically the sales will pick up, because there is an appetite to invest still in the market. Whatever it is, COVID-19, the circulation of the money has stopped to some extent. But if we say the money is not there in our economy, it's very hard to digest. There is money. There is a certainty. It will take some time, everyone to open their wallets, to open their, get back to the business spree. It will take some time. But if you're bringing right business proposition, if you're bringing the right business proposition, this is definitely gonna work. Okay, So the most important thing is here is right now. The most important thing is right now is to make sure that we are executing it well, and we need to understand the market scenario and circumstances well in detail. We need to. The next point we have here is the commitment of investors. Okay, so what commitment we are. The next point is about the commitment of the investor. So what type of a commitment we are expecting from the investor? We need to communicate to the investor very clearly that you're investing in this particular piece of real estate. We are taking it back on a lease from you for next 25, 30 years, whatever the commercial discussions we need to have, but take it for a long-term tenure only, okay? Now, that's need to be clearly told to them, and what's his rights in the agreement need to be well explained, okay? And what is the returns he's going to get, the projections need to be delivered, and what we expect from them, okay? So if tomorrow they overutilize the room nights in for their personal usage, how the returns going to drop down for them, that also need to be explained pretty well. So this that's the reason transparency is the key for this particular business module. Now, the next point is the ownership clarity. So similarly, we need to pass a clear clarity to the investor that the ownership is the free hold title on this particular real estate piece, okay, which you own it, and you have an option to exit also. But the leasehold rights on the property of that SP will remain the intact. All these clarities need to be well given to them, okay? And the resale rights, as I mentioned, that they always have a right to resell it, subject to the leasehold rights remains intact on this. So that's typically the points, top points to be considered by the investor when they're planning to execute. And it's like a marriage which go hand in hand from the developer and the investor side. And operator is the one who will make sure the relationship goes well. And the other aspects which are very critical in this entire relationship is the asset manager of the asset, who's gonna keep interacting with the operator on regular basis to make sure the asset performs to the best of its ability, and investor relationship manager who keep interacting with the investors and sorting out investor related concerns, issues, providing them MIS, sharing any doubts, clarification, making sure everyone is getting paid on time. And if someone wants to stay in the property, their records and bookkeeping all well taken care of. So if this entire chain is well structured, okay, there's no reason you can go wrong in the execution of this project. Yes, Vijay, over to you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are opening this forum for Q&A session. I would request all the audience, they can type the question in chat or Q&A section. I will take up one by one. Nandi, we have a first question right now. Yeah. The first question is, okay, the first question is from one of our audience. What's the normal share operator charge, and what should developer ask them?
So operator fee you are asking?
Yeah, so they want to know about the operator fee, like how much operator charge on this kind of a model.
Sure. So this project again can work on two modules. One is that you take a franchise of a brand, and second is you give the operations also to a brand. Okay. So first, let's start with the franchise. In franchise, what happened that the brand has lent their brand name to your project, and after that, the day-to-day operations is taken care of by your own operations team. And the brand give you recruitment help, training help, and they help you in the central level distribution and marketing initiatives and all that. And the sales support from the central teams or regional offices only, but the local sales is done by the unit team only. So that's a franchise where typically the fee can work anything from 4% to 6% of the room revenue. So there the fee restricts to room revenues only. Okay, putting together it can be anything 6 to 7% at max. Now, if we are coming to the management contract, that's where the entire operationals, day-to-day operation responsibilities of a brand. Okay, we call it operations and management agreement. Now, under that, the top line can be anything around 3 to 4%, which is the fee of the brand fee on the turnover of the business. 3 to 4 entire unit business, whether it's coming from rooms or F&B or any other department. So 3 to 4% of the turnover, and then another fee they charge on the GOP, which is gross operating profit, and which we can split it up into slabs, or we can have a flat structure. There's a commercial angle to this, which we always negotiate best to our ability for other clients, which can vary anything from 5 to 8% of the GOP, subject to in which bracket of the GOP you are falling. It's a slab structure. And in addition to that, there are some other fees like a sales and marketing fee, which is typically 1.5 to 2% of the gross turnover. And then there's another fee of the channel businesses, loyalty programs, and all that. So putting together, top lines, 8% of the top line go as a fee to the turnover, go to in these different structures to the operator for running the entire show.
Okay. The next question is for Ashish. What would be the legal process to convert an existing hotel into a strata sales model? Can it be done for a distressed hotel?
For distress, it will be a little difficult, but yes, it can be done for existing model also. Subject to, you'll have to check if you are the sole owner, like there are no investors involved, and there is no big set of people who are controlling you. Then probably you can enter into this model, and then you can convert it, as we have discussed, that you'll have to first have a sale agreement in place for selling those individual units, and then there will be a lease agreement for leasing out those units to yourself, or probably the operator, if you can enter into a tripartite agreement with them. So it can be done.
Okay. Now the next question is for Ashish as well as for Nandi. One of our audience like to know what are the insurance available for this kind of a venture for sale and leaseback model, and what are the replication of those insurance?
So you mean by insurance of the asset?
So the audience, one of the audience want to know like what are the insurance policies for this kind of a model, and how it cover the whole business as well as the liability side.
Okay, this insurance works typically the way for any other conventional hotel property. So in a hotel, or in a resort, you take for two insurances. One is for the asset insurance, okay, which covers all the, whether it's operating supplies or fixed asset or the plant and machinery, that all is covered. And the second insurance is a third-party insurance, where in case of the operation, if some mishappening happens and there's some claim on the asset or asset owner, okay, so in that third-party insurance helps to take care of those claims. So these are typical insurances which are taken by the owners. And in this particular aspect, this point can be valid. I think maybe that question is from when in the startup sale, who is taking the insurance, whether it's the owner of that particular villa or that room is taking, or the operating company is taking while operating and all that. So that's a commercial discussion. Even if, let's say, your return is 10 lakh rupees in a year for that particular villa. So obviously that as a beneficiary of that insurance policy, you have to take the insurance for that. Yes, but third-party insurance, this is, I mean, to buy asset insurance, but the third-party insurance will be taken by the operating company, which will come in the P&L.
Okay. Our next question. Please go ahead.
To add to what Nandi has said. See, what happens is for these kind of insurances, like, say suppose if someone is not putting in that insurance, someone has to bear that cost. And if the party who is interested with, so generally what happens is if the owners are not taking up this, insurance, then in that event, the SPV or the hotel operator, because it will be there in the agreement that they will take that insurance because it is very much required. So they will take it up, and the expenses will be deducted from the revenue which is going to be shared. So that is another aspect which generally gets covered in the agreement.
That's right.
Okay. So our next question is one of our audience like to know how much inventory should a builder hold when he building the sale and leaseback model, and should all the revenue coming from the inventory need to be shared with the investors in the rental pool back model?
Okay, so two questions you asked, Vijay. So first question is that how much inventory need to be held by the developer. Now, there is no hard and fast rule. The idea is that holding the inventory is that the developer is committed towards the project in a long-term scenario. He don't have a typical mindset of residential development where he's sell and he's moved on, and what happened to the project he don't know. Okay, and that's the reason why this model has failed terribly in the country. Okay, that's a very important point. It's not that this project has not been, something like this has not been executed in the country in past. It has been executed in NCR, in many other parts of the country as well. Only thing where there was not a bona fide intent, and the intent was to liquidate to the maximum, move out of the project as soon as possible. Once the construction is over, there the things collapsed. So we strongly recommend that at least 1/3 share of the entire inventory should be kept with the developer from a long-term perspective. And even if he wants to exit out of that, he need to sell that 1/3 in a single block with the common areas. Okay, so that's very important and crucial. If we don't do that, okay, and these days investors are pretty well informed. They are, aware about most of the things and all that. Now it's not easy to fool investors. Okay, so from the developer community, from the owner to the owner community, it's my advice that if you're developing something like this, develop this from the mindset that you are gonna be part of this project from a long run. Instead of taking debt, you opted to sell the inventory and to de-risk your project and make sure it is sustainable for long term. But you need to have this project with the intent that you're gonna be there from a long term perspective, and that's how you can do multiple such projects. Okay, as I said, that one happy investor will get you 10 more happy investors. That's the key. Because if you have sold fully, you have zero now financial interest involved in that project. You will not probably visit that project again. No one will look towards the maintenance. The entire transaction and the structure will fall down there and there only. And it will lead to just litigations between the parties, and it will be messy affair. So, and it will spoil your brand name as a developer, as an owner, for which it takes ages to build. So my sincere advice is that if you're getting into this, get into the state of mind that you're gonna hold the 1/3 inventory with a long-term perspective.
Okay.
And your second question, yes, can you repeat the second question, please?
Second question was, is that amenities revenue need to be shared with the investors?
Okay,
amenities, restaurants, banquet, yeah.
So yes, banquet and restaurant. Now it's actually case to case. If it is a very asset, the revenues are totally dependent on the lodging. Okay, on the room side, then probably you can restrict to only the department level, room department level revenue. But then you need to increase the percentage number. Okay, then you need to increase the percentage. The percentage number need to go as high as 32 to 35%. If you are doing only on the room revenue basis, because just for ease of accounting and for the ease of everyone. Okay, but let's say you want to do, let's say there's a huge potential in the F&B business also, and the nature of product you have built is with the huge banqueting and the huge lawns are available. Okay, someone has to pay for that. Okay, at the end, it's all require investment. The capex increases if I'm building 10,000 square foot banquet with a huge spa area, with the multiple restaurants, the bar, and the large swimming pool, and all that. Someone need to pay for that. If we are doing all that, and we see that the F&B and the room revenue is gonna be 1:1, because my whole target is that I'm gonna do MICE and social wedding and social events and the corporates launches and all that. Then I own a room or villa. Okay, where I have my rights fully, and I have an undivided share of all these common area amenities. Okay, and finally, when you was explaining very well in the your Excel sheet that how the GOP level works and all. So when the final EBIT level comes after GOP, you pay the operator fee, you pay keep certain reserve for you pay the property tax, insurance, and then you kept certain reserve for FF&E. All that is done. Whatever the remainder, then that evenly distributed among all the properties owners, all the villa owners or room owners. Okay, and you need to have big force appointed as the auditors to make sure that there's a confidence among your investors that there's absolute transparency in the every single accounting entry in this unit. That's very important. Okay, the idea is that to make sure to give the entire full confidence to your investors that we as a company, as a developer, as an owner is here for a long-term game. We are not here night fly developers where I'm going to execute one project, make my money, go out and do some other businesses. Okay, kindly don't get into that. The laws are so different today. Even if you do, it will get you back in the trap. Okay, be transparent. Get into this business model with the intent of doing 10 such projects in the next 5 years, not just one project and then move out of this. Okay, so that's very important. Thanks, Vijay. Over to you.
Yeah. So our next question is from one of our audience. He wanted to understand, can you please elaborate on the exit route in this model? Example, what happened after 15 to 20 years lease period? And he also want to understand the resale, like with the investor will have a right to resell.
Okay, now there are two questions you asked. Firstly, that let's say the lease agreement is lease agreement is for 20 years with the operator and with the owner and the SPV, which is controlling the entire pool of investors. It's for 20 years. What happens after 20 years? Okay, now that's a very crucial and important question. I really respect someone asking that. So at that time, those entire investor community need to sit back together and need to decide that, because after 20-25 years, probably the property need massive renovation. Typically after 8-9 years you required one order a renovation, so 20 years means that two renovations so one renovation has happened and the next renovation is now due, and the structure also required some more work from the civil aspect and all that. At that time, the entire investor community need to sit back together with that developer who has a 35% or 30% stake in the project, that what we need to do together now. Okay, and whether to change the nature of asset class or need to come back to this. So that's the time where the consensus need to build together. Okay, now that's typically how it works in any housing societies. Okay, that's need to be done. That's the way forward on that. And what was your next question, Vijay?
What happened on the resale?
So resale, there's always an opportunity for the existing investor to sell in the secondary sale. Okay, that's very much happened. So in the existing projects, some of the successful projects in this particular space in the country, which has been well executed by the developer. Okay, in those cases we have witnessed the resale always happened. In some of the cases, the owners, because the when project is doing well, everything is doing well, there's a good demand, the owners themselves start buying. Okay, if the project is not doing well, that's the time when all this issue come, who will buy, how to exit, and all that story. So it's very simple answer that if project is successful, resale is definitely not going to be a problem.
Sure.
And just to add to it, go ahead. Just to add to it, from legal perspective also, the rights are there. Parties can exercise. It's just that it's a conscious call when you should take that call of either to exit or to resell. And in terms of lease coming to an end, that is again a conscious call which has to be taken by all the investors sitting together, how Nandi has mentioned, because it is very important. And how it happens with us, people would have seen in various cities also that the housing societies, they also opt for a redevelopment after 3 or 4 decades if it is required. So it's ultimately it's a collective decision making which needs to be part of it. It may not be there in the documents, but you have to have it in because the documents will be with the individual at the individual level. So you have to have a collective decision making. Probably you all should come together and then decide and then take the decision accordingly.
Okay. Our next question is from one of our audience. Does the owner of the unit contribute to the renovation, say once every 8 to 10 years?
So yes, that's answer is straightforward yes, and it's basically FF&E reserve which has been created for that only. Okay, not for other reason. So in this case, when there are multiple parties involved, we always recommend the operator to increase that reserve from typically 3 to 4%. You increase it to 5 to 6%. Okay, and keep it reserved. And if there is some surplus available after 7-8 years, from after the massive renovation, this can go back to the investors in the pool again. So it's always important to keep that reserve, and all the good brands, they make it compulsory for the promoters to have it when they sign the operation management agreement. And that's very important from a long-term sustainability point of view. If we don't do it, there are going to be clashes and issues and litigations for sure. And, here there are going to be multiple stakeholders. So it's more important to do it actually. So practically you are only paying it, but it's going from the, before that money getting distributed, it's getting well allocated before that only.
And just to add to it, see what happens is these kind of arrangements. The idea is that you can't get into each and every nitty gritties of it. You should have a trust, as commitment is very important. You should have a trust that the person who is holding this fund will utilize it for the purpose it is meant for, and it will be done in a systematic manner the way it has been agreed upon, not beyond that. So that commitment is required, because you can't have a fund in place, but at the same time you start objecting to it that you can't do this renovation, that renovation. That is the right which should be given to the the operator or the SPV, so that it becomes easier for the operation purpose.
Yeah, that's right. And the idea of having the quality auditors on board is to make sure that even if you have a doubt, you always have access to the books to have a look on that. And you can appoint on your cost auditor of your own to verify and all that. That's the whole idea of to appointing big fours.
Either Ashish or you can take up this question. What would be the implication of GST on the share of revenue given to the unit holders, the investor who's buying the unit? So implication of GST on the revenue share.
So basically, that what is revenue share? Revenue share is a lease. Okay, it is a variable lease. So let's say the turnover of the business is, or you're taking from the turnover or you're taking from the profit. That's about the structuring of the deal, which can vary from case to case. In whichever way you are getting, it's a profit share or it's a revenue share, you are getting in the form of a variable rent, which is coming to you, but in a variable manner. Okay, so that rent will definitely attract GST, and GST has to be paid. With the better taxation platform with the GST and all that, it's set offs and all that is easier. Okay, so the GST will come along with that, and they will deduct the TDS also. Let's say your rent is for for a month of September is 1 lakh rupees. So 10% TDS will be deducted from that. Or now it's 7.5 because of the current situation, which will change back to 10 most likely after next financial year. So that TDS will be deducted plus 18% GST will be further prevalent rate at that point of time will be further paid on 1 lakh to you, and you will deposit further to the department. So that's how it's going to work.
Okay. The next question is, can a commercial hotel unit be sold individually, or would it be a share certificate of asset to be sold? So this is a technical question. Can a commercial hotel unit be sold individually, or would there be a share certificate of the asset to be sold? If there is an existing commercial hotel, it can be sold as an individual unit, or it will be sold as a share certificate.
Ashish, would you like to take, or you want me to answer that?
I would suggest you, because see.
Okay.
Wait, I'll answer it.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Good, Ashish. Go ahead.
See, if it's an existing property, of course, you can sell it as probably this question is answered earlier also, that you can sell it. Someone asked this question that if a property is under distress, that it can be sold it in the present model or not. Yes, it is possible. It can be sold, and it will not be by way of a share certificate, because you will have a separate units being sold, and you as a promoter, you will retain certain part of it. That's how the structure is going to be, and then you will have a lease model in it. So then the revenue, because the investor will get rental income out of it. So this is how the entire structure works. It will not be like by way of a share certificate, because these are not the people who are investing in the equity of the company or the membership of the society. They are investing in the property. Separate units are being allocated and sold separately.
Yeah. So very well articulated by Ashish. So yes, if there is no law which stops you from selling the individual rooms, okay, that's a real estate piece. You can always sell it off, and the right will be created of that particular party. Okay, like any other office space gets sold or any residential unit gets sold. It's very much possible. Okay, but that's theoretically. Practically, whether it is sellable or not, it's a now different question, which need to be investigated well in advance, the potential of doing that. Okay, even if you want to do in your existing project in a metro city or in any other city, the entire project need to be first packaged well before you actually do it. Okay, so yes, theoretically it's doable, but whether you should do it or not, it's a subject to getting a feasibility study done, whether it's executable or not. Because even launching a campaign to do that is a investment, a cost is required. Okay.
Our last question is one of our audience, like, can this be done in a brownfield project where the hotel is under construction and it is not thought to be sell as a sale and leaseback model?
The answer is yes. It's linked to previous question that it is very much by legal terms. Yes, you can sell. There's nothing which stops you. Okay. Only thing whether at that particular location, that product, is it feasible to do or not? That's the question, which is the more important question from the commercial viability of doing something like that. Okay, if it is a viable, then yes, it can be done. It has been done in past, and some of the such products are running successfully in right now in the current market conditions. Also, right, with whatever the limited business is available, it is the legality and the operations perspective is getting operated. So absolutely, there is no challenge on that front.
I think, Nandi, we are over with the questions. There are two requests come from the audience. One of our audience, he want to understand, can we get a recording of the session? So yes, what we can do, like we will be putting this whole recording on our YouTube channel. We have our own YouTube channel by the name of Noesis Capital Advisor. You can go on our YouTube, search Noesis, and you will get down to our channel where you can get the recording of our session. And second is one of our audience like to have our contact coordinates. I will reply to him separately. Okay. So thank you, Ashish. Thanks a lot for your time. Thank you, Nandi, thanks a lot for your time, and thank you, FICCI, for partnering with us. We had an amazing session, amazing panel discussion, and thank you, Ashish. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Nandi.
Bye.
Thank you.